Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel V. Hill, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
Here I am with a special guest, somebody that's never been on the show before. At least I don't think so, James Palmer. Maybe in our early days.
I have not, but if I was, I should be in that little open you have there. But was my boy Hammer in that opening?
Yes, he was. You know Matt Hamilton? Incredible.
I know Hammer real well. Yeah. From all the times I go to New York and go on Good Morning Football back in the day, Hammer was always rocking on that show back in the day.
Love Matt Hamilton. Yes, he's a good guest of our show. We've had tons of fun with him. But James, I'm excited for this adventure that you and I are rolling on this season. We're going to be having you on once a week, chatting football, everything going on. But I feel like people want to know what you've been up to for the last couple of months. Obviously, a little bit of an off season for you, but now you're back in the grind.
Yeah, parting ways with NFL Network after a decade. So we spent the off season doing exactly what we do here in Colorado, in the mountains. Mountain biking constantly, enjoying everything I love about our wonderful state. Now we're going to get a chance this season to spend our whole year together, like you mentioned. Also be on with Schlereth and Evans every week, and Zach and Phil every week. And so that's pretty rad. Doing some stuff for Bleacher Report. Got another thing in the works. Not quite yet. Probably the next couple of days it comes out. It should be a super, super fun project for the duration of this season. Super stoked about that. Keep an eye out. But that's the one I can't talk about yet because they haven't come out yet. So
next week, if that has already come out, we'll touch on it.
We'll talk about it next week. I think it should be out by next time we're talking. Yes.
Love it. Well, I'm excited for this opportunity, you and I, to chat a little bit of ball. Let's talk about training camp, though, thus far. And let's just start broad because, again, we haven't had your thoughts and opinions on overall what you've thought about training camp. And then we'll get into today.
Okay. Well, overall thoughts, honestly, I think this is a tough camp. Like I cover the entire league. I've seen camps in every single city, whether they go away or they do them at home. But I've seen camps everywhere, and there are very few guys in this league that run them the way Sean has run this camp. Things have changed over the last couple of years. I remember going to Philly last year, and it was like, I don't think they practiced, Rachel, honestly, 2 days in a row throughout camp. It was just regular days off constantly, pads off a lot. They obviously went to the Super Bowl the year before. They wanted to go light. It didn't work. They've gone harder this year. Sean saw what he did last year and had a kind of physical camp. And what happened? They responded well. They were calloused. That's a term he uses repeatedly. And they were healthy. And so he's, I think, doubling down from watching camp. I mean, they're using every single minute that the CBA allows them to use. A perfect day would be last Friday, where like there's going to be a scrimmage on Saturday. Friday should be light. And in roughly 100 degrees, they're out there for 2.5 hours going through a full practice before they go through that scrimmage on Saturday. And we got gassers at the end of practice and things like that. There's competition, obviously, all over the field. There's a lot of positions up for grabs. But the physicality and the way Sean's running camp, with as young as this team is, as hungry as they are, and as much competition is there, I think it's kind of a perfect match as a whole, the way camp's gone so far.
Well, and with how competitive Sean Payton is. Last season could not have left a good taste in his mouth either. So he says, you know what? We didn't perform the way we wanted to. We all remember the quote, I'm going to be pissed if this isn't a playoff team. Okay, well, now what can they do this year to make sure that can happen? And yeah, we are seeing them put in the hard work. It's fascinating, though, that you say this is one of the harder camps that you've seen around the NFL, because some days I look out there and I'm like, okay, well, there are some of the guys are just waddling around, it feels like. But compared to other teams, they're actually putting in the work.
Camp's a grind. It is a grind. And trust me, they haven't really had any of those days where it's like, hey, we're just going to go real light today. That's a big thing that sticks out to me. There hasn't been that day where we're going to go real short and we're going to go real light. Like that's really not the way Sean has done this. And it's, I think, mainly because of that word callous, and it's because of how the competitions are. Like you have position battles. So all of these reps matter. Like a lot of them matter. Your second corner opposite of Pat Surtain, whether it's going to be Damari Mathis or it's going to be Riley Moss or Levi Wallace, who's out with a hand. But like, how does that shake out? Well, a lot of reps helps that. You know, a lot of reps helps this center position that is extremely important. And I think there's like another competition. I'm trying to think. The quarterback competition. Yeah, that's only one we got.
Three QBs right now.
Working 3 QBs. So like, all ththese reps are really, really important. We've seen it kind of blown dead. Like sidebar here real quick, like the 2 minute they've been running at the end of games and the end of practice and doing the end of game situation. There's been some times where they've just kind of ended it, maybe a rep early for Zach Wilson. He's been taking most of the third opportunities at the quarterback spot. Today, they didn't And what they do, he throws a touchdown, well, the offense will believe it a touchdown, defense will say no, to Troy Franklin in the back of the end zone. And it's kind of funny. I was thinking to myself, like, well, that's a rep Troy Franklin needs. That's a rep a lot of these other guys that are here and young need. And so his value on all of these reps for all three quarterbacks, I think, is showcasing throughout the course of this camp.
I'm totally with you. Let's talk quarterbacks, though, because that's what everybody is interested in. Okay. I know. It's crazy, right? Are we not giving Zach Wilson enough credit, or is he just he's out of the mix. Like, that's become very clear with the fact that he's not with the first team. But sometimes, James, we do see a little bit of can be a highlight play. Like, it's sprinkled in there just a little bit. And I'm just curious your thoughts. I mean, obviously a number 1 overall draft pick at one point in time, and now here he is, and we're talking about the third strings, and he's not even in the game.
Yeah, I would say this about Zach. Obviously, the wow plays with his arm strength and his arm talent, it's elite. You're going to see those. And he's really the one quarterback that's really looking to go downfield consistently. And maybe it's kind of how he thinks. A, B, that's probably how you get yourself in this race if you make some big plays while the other two are kind of being a little bit more conservative. I would say this. He's not in the starter race. Camp, to my understanding, in the Broncos' eyes, for him has gone far better than what they expected. I think, in my opinion, it's gone better than what I've expected for camp. I think Zach has not had a very bad training camp by any stretch. And he is in like quarterback rebuild mode right now. It is a reconstruction for Zach Wilson, and getting with a quarterback like a coach like Sean Payton in a room where, if you listen to all three of these quarterbacks just rave about Davis Webb, this is like quarterback rehab for him. And if they can find a way to, I don't think you're going to carry 3 quarterbacks, but put him on the practice squad for the duration of the season. And with the new rule, you can call him up every single week and then bring him back down and do however you'd like. Like, this might be a great year for him to continue to rebuild himself. And I've told some people this, like, so I like this move, because a few things can happen, Rachel, with Zach. It's either they continue to develop him, and maybe next season he's their backup behind Bo Nix, and you got a great, talented, flashy backup that you do trust, because the consistency needs to be there. Yeah. 2, like, what if he starts playing pretty well and you flip him for a better pick than the 7th round pick you traded him for? And then it's not the end of the world that, like, I don't know, maybe it's a 5th, maybe it's a 4th round pick. Somebody sees that, like, maybe they can do something with him. He's kind of back on track because he was dealt a raw hand in New York. Let's just be honest. Like, no quarterback in the beginning of their career wants to go through that. Go talk to Sam Bradford and what that first couple of years were like for him. Like, so I think it has gone better than most of us have expected for Zach Wilson. I'm curious what he would think. He talked to us today, but I don't think he really alluded to, like, this is better than me. I think he likes his mindset, though, right now in this camp.
Total rebuild with him. And I'm curious, did you ever see him up with the Jets? Like, did you ever go to any of their training camp practices?
Yeah, I saw him plenty, and it didn't look like this, honestly. And I think he had a lot of weight on his shoulders. We talked about, I asked Bo this question today, how he handles expectations, because there's massive expectations for him being a 12th overall pick. Zach was a 2nd overall pick in New York City. Like, on a team that has been starving for a quarterback for an eternity with the Jets. Like, so expectations can weigh on a person, and you can rush them along much quicker than maybe they are ready to do, because there's pressure from fans, there's pressure from the head coach, there's pressure from ownership, pressure from all these things to play somebody right away. Nobody wants to sit anybody. So I do think getting out of that situation has alleviated some of that pressure and allowed him to kind of go play a little bit more free. And I think we're seeing a better quarterback right now. We'll see how the trajectory continues. We'll see if it continues to grow and progress in a positive way. Some people around the league I talk to don't think he will ever kind of get to that level. But it's kind of cool to watch and see. And it makes the preseason game super fun to watch.
Oh my gosh, 100%. I also have to laugh because you're like, nobody wants to see them sit the quarterback. All I can think about is when Atlanta took Michael Penix and we were all laughing. Like, what on earth is going on right now?
I wasn't laughing. Well, I knew, like, way in advance, because I found out, like, super early, like 2 months before the draft, or maybe a month before the draft, that they were going to take him. And I do laugh, Rachel, honestly, because like everybody's searching for a quarterback. Denver's been searching for a quarterback forever. And then once a team is proactive about the position, we rip them to shreds when they're planning for the next 10 years, when one guy is a 36-year-old quarterback with most of his money in the first 2 years. And what are they going to do? They're going to try to plan long-term, and now we're ripping them apart. It's kind of funny how this league works. What usually ends up happening is it's a wait and see, because everybody can have their opinions forever. But if they have 2 great years out of Kirk Cousins, maybe it's 3, and then Michael Penix plays for the next 10, they'll be getting the last laugh in the end, where they didn't have to get into panic mode by any stretch.
No, 100%. Okay, let's switch it back to Bo Nix now, because the expectations are really high, and a lot of people are hoping, myself included, that he's the guy out there week 1. How have you feel like Bo has handled his first training camp? Because he was a little, I don't know, we've seen Bo be a little talkative. He's never overly talkative like Jarrett Stidham, but today he seemed a little frustrated with how his practice went.
Yeah, he was a little short at the beginning of the podium. And I was like, well, this is not going to really, but he opened up a little bit as it went on. I see him as a really competitive person. I see him as a guy that also stays pretty much in this middle area. You don't see him get super high. You don't see him get super low, which I think is huge as you're trying to evaluate when to play him, because there's two things you have to mainly evaluate, Rachel, in whether he's ready to play. One is just on the field. Like, can he operate the offense? Can he get in and out of the huddle? Can he go through all the checks? Can he really just, find ways to beat defenses and protect the football? That's that's number one. He's doing pretty well. Like, the progress is there. We can see it through that. Yep. The other one is the one that we just kind of talked about with Zach Wilson and other rookie quarterbacks. And it goes back to a conversation I had with D'Amico Ryans and Bobby Slowick down in Houston last year when CJ Stroud was there in his first week of training camp. And I was told what our number one focus is to make sure that when bad plays happen, because they happen in the NFL, when mistakes happen, because they happen in the NFL, how does he respond on the next play, on the next drive, in the second half, in the next quarter, the next game? How do we know that he's mentally tough enough to go through all of the struggles that a rookie quarterback will go through, because they inevitably will happen?
Yep.
Once we find that out, those guys told me, then we know he's ready to start. That's the other aspect that they're still trying to figure out with Bo Nix, I would assume, is making sure that you don't wreck him during his rookie season. You don't play him before he's ready to play mentally, like this, mentally, on top of the physical side of things, being able to go out there and do that aspect of it. That's the big part of playing a rookie quarterback, just making sure that they can handle all of the adversity that's going to come with playing right away, because you do not want to wreck them. There's a guy who just came to town for a 7th-round pick, and Zach Wilson we just talked about. Difficult stretch. He's getting rebuilt. You don't want to put your first-round quarterback in that mold. I think Bo's handling it pretty well. I really do. And I think some of the struggles he's had in college, having to leave Auburn, going to Oregon, some of these guys, like I mentioned with CJ Stroud, and that's what they're trying to figure out in Houston, he hadn't have any individual failures in college. I'm a Buckeye, so it was almost flawless outside of not beating Michigan. But he had a lot of success in college, a lot of team success in college. You got to know that these guys can handle adversity. Bo's had some of it, right? Like, they didn't go well in Auburn. I think maybe that prepares him a little bit better for this rookie season, having some adversity at the collegiate level.
No, I'm totally with you. And I appreciate the fact that even though, if he heard all of the outside talk, a lot of it is how well Bo Nix is actually doing out at training camp. And I like that he had a little bit of anger inside of him today, because that means he's striving to get better and better. It's not like he had a bad day, but maybe in his eyes, he really didn't have a good day. And we have to talk about the defensive line, because they are by far winning training camp against the offensive line every single day, which is a little concerning, James, considering how much money is on that O-line.
Yeah, big time. And it was funny. I was standing watching practice, I think last week, with Pep Hamilton, who's a good buddy of mine, and he was with Justin Herbert attached to his hip during Justin's rookie season with the Chargers. And I was asking Pep, what's the most important aspect for your rookie quarterback? A great offensive line or great skill players? And he laughed. He's like, are you kidding me? I was like, yeah, we know the answer. The O-line needs to play well in front of the rookie quarterback. And they've put the resources into this offensive line. They need to play well. I'm nervous, like you are, that I'm hoping this is the defensive line is really going to be something this year. Well,
that's where my question is and where I lie. Okay, when we're talking D-line, are we talking middle of the pack? Or are we talking top 8, right, in the NFL? Because that kind of differs where the offensive line is sitting.
It does. And it would be a bit let's be honest, like shocking if they're a top 8 defensive line.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say like they don't have any names, but they don't really have a whole lot of household names. I think Jonathan Cooper, man, had a great day off the edge. And Baron Browning, when I talk to people in the building, has all the athletic ability in the world to be a really, really, really good pass rusher. Problem is we haven't seen it from either one of them. There's potential on the edge, like right there. There's potential for this defense line on the interior to be much better than they were we saw a year ago. I think Jonathan Franklin Myers changes a lot of that. He's just so sound in the middle of the defensive line. It allows DJ Jones to play a lot better, and I've heard great things about him in camp. Zach Allen's having a really good camp. These guys are having a good camp. Like this could be a good offensive line. But I don't want them getting home against this good defensive line. I don't want to get them home against this offensive line as frequently as they are, because there are better D lines they're going to play in this season. So we do have to give them their flowers, though. I mean, they're playing really well up front, and VJ's mixing it up, showing that he's gonna bring a lot of different looks, and they're gonna attack.
Okay, so then walk me through this thought process. If your O-line, if you're Sean Payton and you don't love where your O-line is sitting come week 1 of the NFL season, do you put your rookie quarterback out there and if it's going to collapse on him more times than not, or do you put a guy like Jarrett Stidham out there because it's just not the right equation for a rookie QB?
I think it all goes into the equation. You use the perfect word. I think all of it comes into play when they're making this evaluation on when they play him. I mean, we've seen a number of quarterbacks picked in the first round, and what usually happens when you're picked in the top half of the first round, your team's not very good. Yeah. I just asked Bryce Young this past year and what it was like kind of running for your life a little bit. And guys are put in that situation. It happens. And I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier. How does he respond to it? Does it impact him too much negatively? Is he ready? That's the main part. Like, is he ready? Is this team ready to play with him? That's the main part of the evaluation, because you don't have any really options. You're not going to bring in anybody else to substitute any of these guys on the offensive line. I think they need to obviously figure out the center spot. That's pretty big. But outside of that, the other 4 are good players, and they should be good. They should be good players. I think they're going to rely on the run. And I think these guys do stand out in the run a little bit. Outside of the D-line, I've loved the running back room. So if this offensive line can be some run graders, like that's what Mike Lynch is good at. That's what Ben Powers is good at. Maybe we see a little bit difference from what we're seeing right now at camp.
Okay, so running back room with you has looked solid. It feels like that's really narrowing down into what Sean Payton wants it to be. Wide receivers, there's so much potential in that room. We don't have any superstars, right? Like, we can talk about Court, but he's not that superstar level, but there's a lot of guys who have the exact same skills, and essentially they're all fighting for these limited jobs, I guess I should say. But today at practice wasn't exactly good. We're all up in the media tent. Everyone's like, this might be the worst practice that we've seen out of this Denver Broncos team in quite some time. But Sean Payton comes down to the podium and is like, it was actually better than it was yesterday. And I feel like a lot of us were kind of like, wait a second, Sean, we all thought it was way worse. But let's talk about the dropped passes that we saw, having to get back into the huddle a few times because they weren't clearly ready for the snap. Like, where was your head as we were watching all of these mistakes time and time again today?
Yeah, today was just kind of like, and the mistakes were very visual to us watching, right? When they're drop passes and there's missed assignments and just a rusher's just coming free at the quarterback. And if this is a real game, they're absolutely just blown up. And just kind of the issues were very visual today. I think yesterday, where Sean said it was just not a very good practice, I think there's a lot of things that we don't see unless we know exactly what's going on within the play, where a lot of the mistakes were happening. And those seem to be the ones that really, really bothered Sean yesterday, as opposed to today. I think right now in camp, obviously, you don't want drops. You don't want things like that. But maybe like everybody ran the right route. Everything was perfect. Just catch the ball. Like less mental mistakes maybe in some aspects or whatever. I'm just kind of taking a guess at it because that's kind of what we saw. But this wide receiver room, it's an interesting one. Like they love the size. They love the length. But I feel like there's a lot of the same player in the group. And so that's why I really want to see Marvin Mims come out of kind of some of his frustration that was in a number of days. And he has a different skill set than the rest of the group. That allows him to go take the top off the defense. I mean, as much as they're going to run the ball, and as short as the passing game is with Bo Nix, it's his strength and it's a part of this offense. You got to stretch the defense in some capacity, or else everybody's going to be bottled up at the line of scrimmage. So Marvin needs to stretch, the field a little bit. I think Josh Reynolds has had a really good camp. I think he's had a very, very good camp. I think those are your probably top 3 receivers right now, as you mentioned, Court. So Court and those 2. I think Vele has been phenomenal. I think he really has had a really, really good camp for a kid where he was drafted. And we were joking, not joking, but like talking the other day, like if you switched where him and Troy Franklin were drafted, you'd probably be sitting there going like, sounds about right. Like that's not as much of a knock on Troy Franklin, but much of a compliment on how he's playing.
I was going to say, we've seen so many dropped passes from Troy Franklin. Do you think it's a little bit of his mental?
Yeah, it's been interesting. Yeah, it has. Like there's been like a flash here or there. I mean, I know after quarterback, like it would probably be tight end and center for a rookie to come in and be successful right away. There's just so much to learn. Centers, we just know everything's on your plate. Tight end, you're learning multiple spots. Quarterback's there. The next one's probably receiver, like in terms of what's on your plate mentally. And they're going to demand a lot out of the receivers, knowing a lot of different things, because this offense is going to have to scheme their guys open. Like it's going to be scheme that gets a lot of these guys open. So I do know there's a lot on his plate mentally. But I think people are curious, like, are we going to see some more flashes? Like we were told by this organization that they had a 2nd-round grade on this guy. Like this is a talented player that they really, really like. They can't believe they got him in the 4th round. I think they're looking for some more splash plays or some more flashes of consistency as well. But I think that's just kind of this camp right now. There's not a lot of splash plays across the board. There's not a lot of big explosive plays across the board. Also, the quarterbacks are protecting the ball as a whole, if you would generalize all at camp. So maybe you take the good with the protection in a sense.
Fair enough. Another thing with Troy Franklin, I feel like because of the connection with Bo Nix in college, people were expecting that chemistry and connection to be there. And we just haven't seen as much of that. If you just had to guess, James Palmer, I know we got a few more weeks here of training camp. Which wide receivers are not making this squad?
Oh, boy.
It's tough. I mean, I feel like every single day there's somebody else. And we're like, okay, like a little bit more here and there. And then we're like, oh, things have gone a different way with other people.
Yeah, it's been tough. One thing stands out to me, and we'll just talk about this. I hope Tim Patrick makes the team. I think that's going to be a tough call for the coaching staff, just the way it's gone so far. I loved him. I think he's a great person. I think he's a really, really good football player. Just looking at where things stand with him right now, where the numbers are in this roster, I just want him to be on the team because of what he brings to the locker room, what he brings to the room. There's so many intangibles that come with Tim Patrick that will help this young team. But he's got to get a roster spot to be able to do all those other things. There's a little fear in my mind. I'm not saying I know anything, but little fear in my mind that that's one that I think we need to keep an eye on.
I think that's actually on a lot of people's radar too, just because
I don't want it to be on my radar. I don't.
No, that would be so terrible. Like he has gone through so much, obviously, with his 2 training camps too. It would be heartbreaking. I feel like for not obviously for him and his entire family, but for Broncos country too. So many people are invested.
Really well liked. Yeah.
Right. It'd be killer. All right, James Palmer, that's going to do it for us today. I appreciate you. I'm so excited for the rest of the season.
I'll see you next week. Maybe we'll have some news. I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, I love a little tease. All right, that is going to do it for both James and I here today. We will be back tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. for another episode of Denver Sports Daily, and right back here, 12 p.m. for coffee break. Bye, everybody.